Hello, welcome back, everyone. Another episode of Final Boy Status. My name is Luke Haueter. Boy, it has been a minute since I've hosted, and I'm feeling like I have forgotten completely how to even exist. No, I start with crowd work, right? I'm pretty good at the crowd work. So I start with like hey, I've been doing like a lot of traveling lately, and then you guys, okay, and then it's not your fault, but you're being kind of a bad crowd. As I'd be like, hey, I've been doing a lot of traveling lately. And you guys go like, oh, where have you been traveling to?
This is my girl.
In
case you were asking.
What?
Her name is Lanson.
Yes.
Okay.
Where have you been traveling? I'm his girl, by the way. Just wanted to establish that. But also
his girl Friday. Okay. Well, now I feel like the audience is really into this.
Yeah.
The audience that's here with me. So I should invite them in. In the audience today are my good friends, Adam Michael Bone and Lanson Lappin. Charles Lappin, to be precise. Yes. Adam's
me.
girl.
Adam's girl. We're gonna find a man like that.
This would be a class. And then I go back to my crowd work, right? Because that's what I'm good at. Right. Continue. So hey, I've been like traveling a lot lately. You do like it.
Hey, where you been traveling lately to?
Oh, it doesn't matter. But while I've been traveling, right, I've been watching a lot of the TV show Psych.
Nice.
Because like it's on Amazon Prime. That's a shout out for them. And you can download episodes and not need Wi-Fi to watch. So it's a great like traveling companion.
That's dope.
Been watching a lot of the TV show Psych. And there was something that I thought was very relevant to this podcast in that there was an episode that had a very special guest star. A person we discuss a lot on this podcast, comes up constantly. He played a childhood friend of Sean and Gus's that was never mentioned before this one particular episode, conveniently. But there was a episode that guest starred our friend Freddie Prinze Jr. And I was like, oh, that's really funny. And I should tell them about it later. And then I was like, I got to bring this up on the podcast because there is exactly one thing Freddie Prinze Jr. could do in an episode of Psych that would make me think this has to be brought up on the podcast. Can you guys guess what that is?
A Deus Ex Machina at the end with a gun.
Okay, well, this time it happened to be nunchucks, but he for real did show up at the end of the episode and save everybody.
Oh, that's amazing.
It was the perfect like Final Boy Status version of events where I was thinking in my head, like, it would be really funny if this happened. If that was just like in his contract, like, yeah, I'll come to your show, but I have to be the hero at the end. And he was the hero. But
Did all of stupid.
Here's the thing. In terms of like what we were talking about seconds before this podcast started, we were talking about how all men look hideous when they're getting head. They all look a little dumb when they're getting head. I'm just imagining Adam when he gets head thinks he looks like Freddie Prinze Jr. Like what does that face look like? This is great for the podcast audience, but what does that face look like, do you think, Adam? Like, oh
no. That's my Freddie Prinze Jr.
Perfect. Just imagining your partner doing you a real favor and you're just is this good content? Is this what our listeners were hoping for? Probably, right?
I think so, yeah. Yep.
Look, horror fans are kinky. They want to know about that stuff, I think.
Horror fans are the horniest bunch of
fans
hornballs I've ever met.
Yeah,
just
dude.
Judging by horror movies and how horny they are.
Dude,
like 90%.
Hereditary, they could not get enough of each other in that family.
Yeah.
Goodness.
I mean, Hereditary. Talk about head.
Oh.
Know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was just funny because Adam said like the average horror fan is such a hornball, and I was like, if we're the sample size, that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, we are the most average of horror fans.
I think
Average
we
Joe.
represent the population
Yeah.
pretty well.
We represent the most average of Joes and the most average of horror fans. Like, we're the median of horror fans. There are those that are worse. There are those that are better. We're right in that sweet spot where people don't expect too much from us.
Yep.
I like,
and we don't surprise anybody.
No, never. I do think it's funny that when this show first started, we had somewhat the guise of like, we'll try to make this family friendly. We would bleep stuff. We'd avoid talking about anything too explicitly. And now we're at a point in this podcast where if you watch the YouTube version, Adam actively has a ticker that says wet for Wendigos. And we open it up talking about like, what face do you make when you get head? Like, so we're a far cry from where we used to be. And I think it's for the better. Like we said, horror movies, you're all just a bunch of perverts. And some of you out there actively like the fact that I just called you a pervert. And we know that. So
yeah, I did. I mean, they probably did. You're right.
Yeah, you definitely shouldn't stop. The people at home really want to hear it.
The people at home, I mean, me personally, like, I don't need to know about it, but like the people at home, they got to know.
They do. They deserve it.
This has been a forever long intro of not talking about the podcast and what it is at the end of the day. Adam has accurately introduced us as the most average of Joes. And the entire point of this podcast is we do exactly what you and your friends do after watching a horror movie. We sit around and we think, what good decisions did the characters make? What bad decisions did the characters make? And how could we use our knowledge and our skills to get out alive? And so we represent the median of the population, trying to determine how survivable a horror movie is. We come up with some plans to get out, and we see how it all wraps up together at the end. And we have an exciting movie to talk about this week. This is a movie I watched like the better part of a month ago. I watched it in broad daylight. I wish that was a joke. I watched it in broad daylight with a window directly behind the TV that was wide open. But this was a movie chosen by our good friend Lanson Lappin, and I would love to hear him introduce the movie, give us sort of a summary of what it's about, and tell us why he wanted to talk about this movie.
Yes, absolutely. So this was one of the horror movies that came out that when I watched the trailer, I was very excited to see what they were going to do, because this is a movie that centers around the mythology of Wendigos, which I think is a very fascinating lore that comes from First Nations peoples as well as Native Americans. I thought, unfortunately, this is one that was kind of pushed back with the pandemic, with COVID and everything. But so basically, just to kind of give a little bit of a synopsis, this whole movie takes place in this small Oregon town, and kind of centers around this teacher played by Keri Russell, who grew up in this town, has since moved away and has moved back. She's living with her brother, and she has a student in her class that starts to have kind of this just things seem to be off with him in his home life. And so that kind of starts to spark a chain of events of just spiraling into a lot of violence, a lot of madness, but it's a really good movie. So that's just kind of a little bit of a synopsis of that. But yeah, a big reason I wanted to watch it and what it ended up delivering on. I know we're kind of getting more into the general opinions of the movie, but what's cool I felt about this movie and why I wanted to bring it up in the podcast is that similar to how the Wendigo was used as a myth to bring up subjects of, the darker sides of humanity, this movie also brought up the same types of things in the sense of kind of delving into that darker nature of man. I do have to say, just to give anybody out there just a trigger warning, this is one that does delve into addiction, into abuse. So just have that in mind when you're watching it. But yes, that's just a little bit of why I wanted to talk about it, why I wanted us to watch it. And yeah.
Also, spoiler alert, has to be said every podcast because we
Yes.
break it down. We get into the nitty gritty specific moments. We'll be talking about the end. So if you haven't seen it, go watch it and then come back and listen. Watch movies along with us. That's always fun.
Further spoiler alert, although I will say you should just expect this always, but Keri Russell is a goddamn delight in this movie. Big fan of her work. So spoilers, but she's fantastic. This is spoiler alert. Sorry about that.
In case you were waiting with bated breath of like, I'm on the fence about Keri Russell. This movie gonna win me over or what? If you are that person, you need to rethink your life because Keri Russell is amazing.
Remember when she was in like 5 minutes of a Mission Impossible film and like was the best part of that movie?
Yes.
Come on.
I love Top Gun.
I know, right? Her mustache and that was incredible.
Dude. Yes.
But now we're going to jump in before we get into the nitty gritty of breaking down plot, characters, antagonists, little kid bullies. Before we get into all of that, we'd like to just talk a little bit about what we thought of the movie, some highlights, some lowlights, and maybe some gripes we have with the don't as well as things we really want to call out as being great. Lanson just talked about, God, I don't know. I wasn't listening, but he was just talking. So I think it's Adam's turn to talk, probably. We'll circle back to you, Lappin, like keep it down. But let's start with Adam, Mr. Wet for Wendigos over here. I don't think this movie had any sort of effect on him.
I was very wet by the end of this movie, so I should tell you how I feel
Adam,
about
nobody asked.
I did. With my eyes.
I answer the questions nobody asks. That's my job.
The hero we need, but never asked for.
Just imagining periodically for like the rest of the podcast, he'll just randomly bring up something that nobody asked about. He's like, well, you can't juice a banana, so there's no banana juice.
Anyway.
Anyway.
I didn't go into this movie really knowing anything about the movie itself or the lore of Wendigos. I think I've probably listened to like a cryptid podcast or something and they talked about it briefly, but I didn't know a whole lot other than they were like had antlers, judging by the title of this movie, I guess. And I knew it was like a Native American thing perhaps. But I feel pretty 50-50 on this movie. We don't do ratings anymore, but if we did, it'd be very in the middle because I think this movie felt great. It had a great atmosphere. I thought it was filmed very well. I thought the effects were pretty good. I liked the character the creature design a lot. I thought he was super spooky. When you saw him, you're like, okay, that's like I can't imagine a better looking creature than what they eventually did. But I will say I think this movie is a slow burn and doesn't really earn being a slow burn, if that makes sense. I think the story is pretty basic and it kind of feels like they're trying to unravel a mystery when you kind of already know what's going on the whole time. It's not really a mystery to you. You kind of predict the end, and I felt like the end was honestly kind of anticlimactic. It was kind of like I made this same joke about a different thing, but I'm gonna say it again. It kind of felt like they turned on easy mode and were like, now I'm gonna just wreck this thing. And it's like, where did the scary, really well able Wendigo go? Now it's just like batting kind of generally in Keri Russell's direction. Anyways, so there were some things I didn't like. I felt like it was kind of slow, but there wasn't enough intrigue in the story to really keep me interested. But that being said, the atmosphere was awesome. I love the small town feel. I love movies that have that. The acting was great. We've talked about Keri Russell, and you didn't see this, but before I was giving hate to Jesse Plemons because I hated his Breaking Bad character, but he's a great actor and he was great in this. The kid was really good. But I just think the writing and the story itself didn't interest me enough to really hold me through this movie, unfortunately. But yeah, everything else was good. Those are my thoughts.
Very good. And we'll slide it right over to Lappin, give him a chance to give a rebuttal. Emphasis on the but, if possible.
You got it. So, Adam, your ding dong, your opinion is wrong.
Mm.
However, no, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just.
I'm not
It's like
surprised.
watching a presidential debate.
About that, you're a dummy head, so we can forget what he said. But what I'm gonna say is the truth because I said it. Anyway, here we go. No, but yeah, I can definitely appreciate what you're saying, Adam. I felt like I really like this movie. I will admit it's not the most amazing. Like if I were just to be looking for a horror movie to watch on a Saturday night, this probably wouldn't be my first pick. But I thought that it was a solid enough story to keep me entertained and keep me engaged. I did really love. Adam kind of touched on it, but I did love the way that the movie was shot. I love the location in British Columbia where they shot it. It was amazing. The creature design was great. I do have to say, an interesting fact is that the antlers aspect of Wendigos is actually something that is not necessary. I mean, there are some instances of that, but mostly a more accurate representation of what the Wendigo looks like in mythology is actually from the game Until Dawn. The whole antlers thing was actually added in a 2001 movie called Wendigo, which is kind of funny. Adam and I were talking about that briefly before the podcast. Got Tom Lee Jones.
Are you fact checking this right now in real time, Adam?
Please do.
No, I'm looking up Until Dawn Wendigo because I'm interested. Oh, geez, that's a freaky looking thing.
Yeah, because usually it's. I mean, there
I
are.
haven't played that game in forever.
Yeah, no, but yeah, usually kind of having it be a longer frame, gaunt, almost the skin's just stretched over a skeleton-looking creature is more of what was found in Native American and First Nations people mythology. But yeah, I did like. That being said, I did like the design. I did think that it was, just a little bit unique to where I kind of was just saying, I don't know that I've seen that before. I don't know that I've had that sort of representation of the Wendigo presented before. I also loved the acting, Keri Russell, Jesse Plemons. Goodness, I am forgetting the name of the actor that played the old sheriff. He's amazing.
Oh yeah, what's his name? Yeah,
It wasn't Jesse Plemons the sheriff?
old sheriff.
The one that was Graham Greene. That's what his name is. That's right.
Oh,
Dancing
okay.
with Wolves
Right.
guy.
Yes, yeah. But yes, he's great.
Wait,
in that
so
too.
hold on. He was
Before Jesse Plemons was the sheriff, Graham Greene's character was the sheriff.
that actually explains a lot.
That's why he was always there at the crime scenes randomly.
That's right.
Yeah. I was like, why is this
From
guy so
that.
involved?
Oh goodness. But yes, that is kind of my take. Not the greatest of movies, but I thought it was fun. I like the world that it created. I like the creature. I thought the acting was very solid. So I give it thumb up.
Have to say, Adam, I'm a big fan of when a phone rings in the middle of a podcast. That's
I
great.
forgot to turn it off. That's my bad.
It's
I'm
always
so
good.
unprofessional.
Just wait until it happens to me. That's going to be fun.
I'm gonna
I'll
call you
leave.
right now.
Calling you right now.
I've definitely done streams where you can hear on the stream my phone ringing. And I don't pick it up because I'm so engrossed in what's happening. Right. So I'll what can I say that
What's
hasn't
your
been
thoughts,
said already?
Luke?
Boy, oh boy. I'm glad I've actually had some time to sit with this movie. I feel like the longer I sit with it, the more I like it. I think that's a common thread with me through this series. If like
Gotta marinate
more-
on your movies.
I gotta really like sit with them for a while and think about it. The
Respect it.
performances, great. I like how it looks. I like the effects. One thing, and this doesn't have a whole lot of weight because I'm like a white guy, but I do feel like needs to be said. It is always kind of weird when we see mythology from a certain culture ripped off, or not ripped off, but like taken and put into a horror movie that has white protagonists. I always think that that's a bit of a, not to be too much of a downer on this movie, but I think that can be a bit of a bummer when you know that the Wendigo is so very much a First Nation and Native American kind of folklore. It does make it kind of a bummer that you're like, oh, so I'm going to watch a movie about a bunch of white people then. Like, but obviously this movie kind of had other stuff going on and had other themes going on. And so I thought it was a really solid watch, very atmospheric, very cool. But I do think that's a legitimate thing that somebody should probably say. So I will say it. As far as if there's anything else, I will say I didn't do the research that Lanson did into this movie. The research I did into the Wendigo mythology was I watched the episode of Supernatural that they were in, and it's really interesting to hear Lanson.
I've seen that episode too.
It's really interesting to hear Lanson share facts about like what they looked like in mythology, and know that a movie about Wendigos is somehow less accurate than their portrayal in Supernatural.
Yeah.
In that cheap CW. Like that was like episode 3 of that show, so they still had no money.
Really
Still thought they were going to be canceled any day. And in fairness, they did get canceled, like eventually. So they knew it was coming from day one. They were like, oh boy, we only got 15 years. We only have the better part of 2 decades to wrap this up. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I really get taken in by mythological creatures in movies that are not the standard mythology creatures, not vampires, not werewolves. I like when they find something that isn't talked about a lot and discussed. Lanson and I, as a bit, started watching Teen Wolf together, and then I think the bit somewhere along the way was no longer a bit because we watched like half of it. And the shout out we kept giving to that show is like, they found weird mythologies. Like the baseline was like werewolves, which is pretty standard, but they went out of their way to like go into mythologies that you had never heard of before. In particular, like some of the Japanese mythology they explored in like seasons 3, 4. The way they track seasons is so confusing, but there's some really cool like Japanese mythology going on in that show. And so I love anything, even if it's like really poorly put together, it will get a seal of approval from me if they highlight a mythology that's not talked about in the mainstream, and it gives it a chance to really let you learn about it and get excited about it. And Wendigos I've been fascinated with ever since I saw that episode of Supernatural as a young lad. So I was just excited for a movie about that. And I think this is a really bold depiction of them that's very aesthetically cool and unique. So there's a lot of positive things to say about this movie. So if you like atmospheric horror that's very thematic, check it out. It definitely is a bit anticlimactic, I think. It's so atmospheric and a lot of like crazy shit happens throughout the movie that by the end of the movie, you're kind of expecting a Slipknot concert, and then it's just kind of ends. I say that as if this movie doesn't end with Keri Russell killing a small child.
Amen.
But like, so yeah, spoiler alert, but this movie does end with Keri Russell mercy killing a small child. So that's pretty intense. But like, other than that, I was a bit taken aback because I was expecting a much like crazier, more insane, more gory, more all out bonanza kind of end to a movie. And emotionally, it's pretty intense, but like the actual film and story of what's happening isn't too crazy. So I don't know. That's enough of that. Shut up, Adam. We're done talking about the movie in general. It's time to go specific.
But what about
hey,
this?
Okay, first of all, shut your mouth.
Okay.
It's still so open. It's all the way closed.
I'm following.
You're doing such a bad job. But I need everybody's mouths all the way closed. And then I need Adam to open his mouth so we can talk about his favorite subject, the Wendigo. Because it is time for the section of the podcast where we break down the antagonist. We talk about their strengths, we talk about their weaknesses, and we try to start formulating a plan to best them in ceremonial combat. And so I feel like the time has come for us to talk more about the Wendigo and its portrayal in this movie, some strengths, some weaknesses, and Adam is just so darn excited about him. I feel like we have to start with him. Hopefully he has something to say.
I always have something to say, Luke.
Okay.
And the thing I'm going to say now is this.
Buying himself time to think.
Yeah, I'm not stalling. No, I already said this. I feel like the power level of the Wendigo was kind of inconsistent, where it was pretty OP. It would just rip people apart. It would murder kids, adults, whoever got in its way. And then at the end, it seemed pretty easy to take down. At least in my opinion, it seemed. But I think just going objective strengths, it's huge, it's powerful, it's got spiny things that it can stab you with. It seems pretty good at camouflage, because there's a lot of scenes where it's kind of there and then it just appears and the characters didn't see it. So I mean, it kind of blends into the trees a little bit. It's in a small town where there's not a very good police force, and I guess that's kind of strength, more of a weakness with the characters, but it has that. Its choice of location is a big strength, because it can just kind of be there without nuclear bombs coming down.
I mean, not with that attitude. You gotta do some reframing on your mental process there, brother.
I've been told that many times.
I feel like it's also worth pointing out that, like, in this particular, I don't know how true to Native American mythology this is, but in this movie, like, Wendigo is sort of almost like an illness, even. So, like, it's something that's transmutable, which I believe is a word. So, like, it's kind of like you get that end reveal that basically everybody who came in contact with the Wendigo, if they survived their encounter with it, they were infected, and they would in fact become a new Wendigo. So it's, I feel like that's something that has to be taken into effect, or taken into your thought process, is like, even if you best it, you're not necessarily walking away without propagating the species still. It's like John Carpenter's The Thing, of like, like, you can beat it, you can destroy it, but like, even down to like a cellular level, this thing can crawl its way back. And that's sort of overwhelming in a way too. So you'd have to have something happen where you're like, there'd have to be something pretty significant to take this thing down and stop the disease, like, in its tracks. I mean, this movie, Mercy killed a small child who was infected, and then immediately in the next scene was like, this other small child is also infected, and I guess will eventually one day die. And you're like, oh, great. So all of that was kind of for nothing. So I feel like that's just an important thing I wanted to address right away. Lappin, this is your pick, your movie. What are your thoughts on the creatures, some strengths and weaknesses? What do you get?
My time to shine.
Spotlight and everything.
That's right. But yeah, as far as strengths, I think it's been brought up. The Wendigo has incredible strength and speed, and does have stealth. One of its only weaknesses, though, famously in legend, is Keri Russell, or women that look like Keri Russell. So it's got that. I'm just kidding. But
women
yeah,
that look like Keri Russell.
Yeah, I mean, or just women. So basically, honestly, it's just women. Let me check my notes. Yeah, just
women that look like Keri Russell. So anybody that's ever been in a movie with Adam Sandler,
dude, that's everybody. Whoa, okay.
Rebecca Ferguson from Mission Impossible, huh?
Oh man.
No one else from Mission Impossible, but Rebecca Ferguson got in there.
Yeah, she got it. She got the secondhand Wendigo kryptonite gene.
And according to Wikipedia, there's only one man that's ever confronted a Wendigo and managed to kill it, and that was Emilio Estevez.
Whoa. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Yeah.
Adds up. I mean, that guy just crushes it every time. He's
Every
never
time.
met a challenge he couldn't take on.
That's right. Breakfast Club and others.
Mighty Ducks. Yeah.
That too. Forgot he was in that one until you said that.
In fairness, like he's in Mighty Ducks 1 and 2, and then Mighty Ducks 3 was like, we don't need him. We don't need him. And then it turned out they did need him.
Mighty Ducks is bigger than Emilio Estevez. The brand will survive.
Audiences were like, no, it is not.
No, about that. Yeah. Oh man, that's funny.
Sorry, you were saying, Les.
No, you're good. You're good. So something that is interesting that the movie kind of diverts from mythology about Wendigos is the fact that it treats becoming a Wendigo like a virus, whereas in mythology, a Wendigo is an evil spirit that follows chaos and basically any sort of darker sides of humanity. So ultimately, it's almost more like a possession where, it's not so much like a disease, but rather at the end of the day, it's your choice to consume human flesh and your greed that you give into that ultimately turns you into a Wendigo rather than like you come in contact with one. So anyway, I thought that was kind of an interesting thing to read about as in comparison to watching the movie. But yeah, definitely in this case, in this movie, it seems like, even if you do escape the Wendigo, or even if you do survive, you don't really survive, because you can get infected by it. Which is true to the myth in the sense of, when you're marked by the Wendigo, you're marked for life. It'll follow you to the rest of your days. So,
right, and sorry if I'm getting like way too serious with this, because here at this podcast we're more about jokes than anything, but like I think that's why the myth of the Wendigo was actually a really interesting thing to pair with like thematically, like the cycle of abuse, because like anybody that experiences that has like the potential for that in them in a way. So it's like, we see that obviously with Jesse Plemons, the brother, because I mean, it's never outright said because it's more focused on Keri Russell's character and her relationship with her dad, but obviously like the implication is there that he was also abused and also had a lot of trauma associated with that. And like you said, it's sort of interesting to have the thought of like in Native American mythology, it's really dependent on like how much you cave to that and how much you like give in to that side of your nature. And maybe like that's part of what the movie is saying. It was like, just because you carry this in you doesn't mean, like it's over. Like it depends on how much you feed this thing, because even though in the next scene they're like, oh, by the way, this little kid is infected, like they didn't like of mice and men him right there on the beach, like they're like, well, we'll keep him alive, he'll probably live a good life, like it's probably all good. So like just because you're infected, I guess we shouldn't act like that means it's all over. Like it depends on how much you give into that thing, in the same way that like violence as a cycle is a cycle. Like it's dependent on you giving in to the seed of something within you. So like if you choose not to feed that side of yourself, that can go a long way. And Lappin, for instance, like huge seed of violence in that guy. He wakes up every day and is like, not today.
Yep.
Guy's a full werewolf in a t-shirt.
Oh wow. Yes, that's me. Just an uncontrollable massive rage.
Adam was saying something. Please go ahead, Adam.
It's all good. I think a part of the movie that I liked, that I mean, obviously there's a couple metaphors going on, because there's also, well, there's like physical abuse and then there's drug abuse, which a lot of times kind of go hand in hand. But I liked how when the dad got infected, he was like, you could tell he was like fighting this side of him that was ravenous, but he was still like a really good dude. I mean, he made meth, but he was like, I need to protect my kids. And so he made the locks on the door, and he was still concerned about his son getting sick, but he couldn't really do anything about it. So he's like, yeah, just bring him in, I guess. And then, so well, this is kind of off topic, but I think it does show that kind of shows the humanity in the, in the cycle where, I don't know, a lot of people are just sick.
Well, and we ragged on this movie a bit. So something to its benefit that I thought within the first 5 minutes is I'm like, oh yeah, the low income single father who has to do illegal stuff to support his family. Like, there's a version of that movie where they present that guy as just an irredeemable monster from the first frame. He hates his kids. He's nasty towards them. But the opening scene makes a point of showing how good he is with his son and that they have a very meaningful relationship. And it honestly does make it like harder hitting that he was just in a position where he felt like he couldn't ask for help, and he tried to do everything himself, and he caved into the sickness, which again, it's a metaphor for like, the sickness of the Wendigo is a metaphor for like, it's confusing because it's supposed to be a metaphor for like 6 different things in this movie. But yeah, it is kind of a metaphor for like drug addiction. And in his case, like the real thing that happens in homes of Americans where a loving and caring parent who wants to be there for their kids, like caves into the sickness. And, it's just a little giving yourself a little bit at a time until you're just like checked out, you're gone. And, his intention was always good, but how do you reach a point where you just like, how do you go back from that, and in fairness, he did not. A full antler creature ripped out of him. Like, it was nasty and very cool. And right about at that point in the movie, I was like, I don't think they cure the dad.
I don't think he makes it.
This is it for him.
I know.
I think he might be dead.
When the Wendigo takes off the flesh mask of his face.
Yeah, when his body literally splits in half and the only thing left is his face hanging on to the Wendigo's face. Right about then, I was like, maybe the dad doesn't come back from this. Maybe.
I will say, to kind of step back into the strengths, is that it's good to have your mythological spiritual effect on people be very incredibly similar to the effects of drugs in a town that's riddled with addiction, because like what happens in this movie, people don't catch on, and they're just like, very concerningly but understandably, there's not a lot of resources in a small town. They're like, the parents are that's just what it's like over there. There's nothing we can do. And so again, the location that this creature is operating in is very optimal for it to continue without being noticed, right? But
the flip side of that argument, when the war on drugs comes to their town, that creature is so screwed.
It's ripping them apart.
Just say no.
When Reaganomics finally gets there, oh boy, the Wendigo is done for.
That's right. Drive it into the sea, my dude.
Something I'm going to point out as a weakness, which none of us has touched on, but we really should have by now. Mm-hmm. At the end of the movie, we discover that if you cut the Wendigo's heart out of its chest, it's like a creepy twine ball that immediately collapses into dust. So like, you shoot this thing, no effect, but if you manage to cut out its heart literally dissolves upon contact with the air. So like, in terms of weakness, huge.
Yeah,
absolutely massive. And I believe that that's something that I don't know the character's name, but the actor Graham Greene, correct?
The old sheriff, yep. Yeah.
He at one point like says something about like, you have to destroy the heart of the Wendigo, and Keri Russell is like, will do, cuts it open, pulls out the heart, and immediately
it destroys itself.
Like,
man, that was a lot easier than I thought.
Apparently this virus dies as soon as it touches air.
Mm.
Maybe we were worried about nothing, you guys. But like in terms of weaknesses, feel like we should call that out. Like that's pretty major. Like,
Right.
you know, guns don't do much to this thing. Maybe you take like a rocket launcher. You know, if you just get the chest open enough that the heart touches the air, you're done. You know.
You get a xenomorph on that sucker. He's gone.
Ooh, now we're talking. It's a classic 1-2 punch in that the Wendigo is gone, but now you have a xenomorph to deal with.
That's right. Alien versus Predator versus Wendigo.
I mean, and there does seem to be a little bit of an implication that there's like a point. I mean, I was joking about it earlier, but there does seem to be in the narrative of a movie like there's a point of no return, but up until that point, you could come back from the Wendigo sickness.
Yeah.
We don't see a character do it, so we can't really say for sure. But it does seem to be like hinted at that like the point of no return is when the Wendigo is about to split your body in half and emerge. And that's like the only reason why Keri Russell Mercy kills that kid at the end is she's like, the Wendigo's coming.
It's happening now.
And then she, you know, exposes the heart to air, and that takes care of that. So like a couple things to note. Like one, this isn't like a virus like the coronavirus where like you have to actively stop the spread. Like if you have it, there are things you can do to combat it and not feed that side of yourself. One. Two, if your heart touches the air, it's done for. Like if somebody did like an open heart surgery on you while you're just infected, I think you're cured. So like I'll just do like an elective open heart surgery. They do that, right? Like I can go to a med school and be like, you guys got to practice your slicing and dicing. Go ahead and open heart surgery on this guy.
Just got to sign your name a couple times.
Go ahead and spray my heart with some Lysol. That'll probably solve the problem.
I'll do it.
A little bit of Febreze just so I don't have heartburn.
Just melt a Tums and just sprinkle it around the heart.
Famously, Tums are really good to have in your body, but outside of your stomach. So you just gotta like,
yeah, don't put it in your stomach.
That's where most people get it wrong. You do not want that in your stomach.
Ooh, tell you what,
in your lungs if possible. Crush that up and snort it like cheap cocaine.
Rub it on your gums. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think kind of like a little bit of movie lore is that he said that Wendigos feed, and the more they feed, the more hungry they get. So I think as a potential weakness, if someone who was able, like, I mean, I guess Keri Russell and Jesse Plemons were both infected, but they were taking care of this kid. If they were concerned about him becoming a Wendigo fast, you just ration the portions. Maybe he likes raw meat, but you just cut up the chicken into little bite-sized pieces and give him a little bit. You don't, I don't know. It's very gradual. I think you can at least slow the process if you don't, you know, give him entire things of roadkill. And the kid was even cutting up the pieces, so maybe that's what he was doing in the movie. I didn't think about that till now, but yeah.
This is a worthwhile question, right? If the thing that turns you into a Wendigo is consuming raw meat, ?
Become a vegetarian? Is that what you're going to go with?
Well, part of me is like, and you get hungrier like the more you eat. Part of me is like, if you just like never eat raw meat, would you just be like a little hungry for the rest of your life? Like it would be shitty, but like I could handle being a little bit hungry for the rest of my life. Like
just get a hobby that satiates you, you know?
Yeah, I mean like, well, they say like if you're an alcoholic, you should always be drinking water or coffee. That way, like there's never a moment where there's like not a drink in your hand and you think about drinking alcohol. So like in this circumstance, you're just like always eating like fucking Chex Mix, like
tofu.
Just always, yeah, you've always got a bag of trail mix on you. Yeah, like if the one thing that does it is raw meat, like all you have to do is cook your meat, and like you're a little hungry for the rest of your life, but as long as you always are eating something, if you're like Brad Pitt in the Ocean's 11 movies, you like
You'll be fine.
like an alcoholic constantly drinking water or coffee. Like I don't know, maybe that would work wonders. I'm not a doctor. At the end of I have to clarify right away, no matter what people have read online, I'm not a doctor.
Mm.
I
I am a
sometimes
doctor,
make that
though.
claim online because it's very funny, but I am not in real life a doctor.
I am a real life doctor, self promoted, and I think it would work.
There you go.
So self-promoted. So you like put up posters around town that say Adam Bone, comma, doctor.
Correct. Yeah,
You
Are
promote
you that
yourself as a
Adam
doctor.
Bone?
I am the
I've seen the-
only Adam Bone.
I made sure of it.
Yeah. Do a Google
There
search
can
out
only
there.
be
You're not
one.
going to find another Adam Bone.
Not if there's a listener out there that is Adam Bone, you're not Adam Bone.
Beware. Oh, I was thinking this was going to turn into a freaking Highlander sort of thing. There
No.
can only be one.
There is
Taking
only
out the
one.
others.
The other ones don't exist.
It's Mortal Kombat, but just among people named Adam Bone, and Adam Bone will be the champion.
Yes. Yes.
Good point though. I feel like that's just cut down the meat consumption, and I think you've handled the bulk of the problem there.
And again, like it's very unclear because I think in Native American mythology, the meat consumption that turns you into a Wendigo is human meat.
Yeah.
So question mark all the times.
The
Like-
roadkill wasn't doing anything.
So the roadkill wasn't turning them into more of a Wendigo, but it was making them hungrier. So when human meat marched through their door, they ate the human meat and turned into Wendigos.
Oh,
So that's like the trick, right? Is
Just
like
don't eat a human.
Yeah, like don't eat a human. So like in theory, if raw meat is like what's making you hungrier and hungrier, then just like cook your meat. Like, do you know how much raw meat I've eaten in my life? Almost none.
Oh, dang.
I mean, look, I could run through my mind palace for the next 10 minutes and come back with a definitive answer of how much raw meat I've eaten.
You're not
And
a
it's
sushi
possibly
guy, huh?
zero. It's possibly zero.
There you go.
Oh, I love sushi, actually. I didn't think about that.
Well, sorry to
Fuck.
collapse your whole thing there, your mind palace.
Well, yeah, forget it. Sorry, I'm a Wendigo.
Shit.
Everything I said over the past 15 minutes, just forget it.
Forget it. He's already one of them.
Here's something I just thought of. The moment a foreign, well, okay, that was the wrong word. A non-familial human walks through the doors, they get immediately eaten. The kid's never in danger. Like, it's scary and he's freaked out, but I don't know. Maybe it's still the choice, the free agency going on with the dad where he just forces himself not to eat his kids. But it never happens. So maybe if it's your family that's all around you, you're okay. Just don't get a foreigner in there.
The implication of what Adam just said being that there was a conversation that dad had with himself where he's like, I would never hurt my son, but the first stranger that walks through that door. All right. Well, we should move on. We're moving a little bit slower than we normally do. This might end up being a super long episode, but
Sorry, guys.
It's
we're
my
having
fault.
too much fun. I was doing my crowd work and we had to make time for that.
Yes.
Look, so next we got to talk about characters. We got to talk about our characters, things they did, choices they made, what's questionable, what made sense to us. I'll start with a little something. One thing that made a lot of sense to me in this movie is that when the old sheriff, apparently, who I did not realize had any sort of position in law enforcement, when he's like, hey, this sounds like a Wendigo, the current sheriff is like, oh, that made up thing? It's probably not that. And honestly, I found that super relatable that he was like, oh, well, it's obviously not that. Like, if I was in his position, like, it's one of those things, right? Where like, sometimes in movies and television shows, you watch cops make like the weirdest decisions. Spoiler alert, Stranger Things season 4, boom kapow. But there's a guy in that season who's accused of murder, and like this other guy who's chasing that guy around trying to kill him over it. And the cops like find the guy who's chasing. This is complicated without names. There's like the jock character of Jason who's trying to chase down the person who's been accused of murder and trying to murder him. And the cops at multiple points in time catch Jason in the act of trying to murder this other person and then just like let him go. Literally a scene where they like find Jason like cradling a dead body, and he tells them it was this other guy. He made this body float up into the air and then he killed him. And I'm going, in what universe does that cop not arrest Jason?
Right.
He's sitting there holding the body and then goes, this other guy did it with a satanic curse. And you're like, oh, or you did this.
Or you just did this. Yeah.
Like, so it was very, sometimes cops make choices in movies where I'm like, what? And I was worried that this would be a movie where the cop's like, yeah, a Wendigo. It makes perfect sense. But in this movie, he very much acted like a human being and was like, oh, okay, so obviously, no. We got to find like a dude who's doing this. And I found that relatable, and I would have done the same thing. I would have been like, hey, mythology's cool, but also wasn't that. Lanson, weigh in. Come on.
So I think that Eddie was to blame for those murders. Even though I've watched season 4 and I know what goes down, it's still Eddie. So that's what I have to say. I definitely was listening and contributed to this conversation.
Okay.
Well, I haven't seen it. You
No.
guys spoiled it for me, so thank you.
You're welcome, dude.
You know what? I'm done.
Did you kill Lanson?
Yeah, I Jesse Plemons him.
Thank you.
What we've all been waiting for. Well,
Lanson,
I can still see Lanson.
Can you
Lanson,
unkill him?
Lanson, you can nod or you can shake your head. Are you going to behave yourself?
Unkill him?
I can't tell what he's doing. He's like nodding and shaking his head at the same time.
Bring him back.
Oh my God.
Okay. But on a real note, though, a decision that I thought was great was when Keri Russell went to the house and she heard some crazy noise and she was like, nah, I'm not going to go in that house. I'm leaving. I was like, yes, that's like one of the best decisions ever made in a horror movie.
Also, like, she has no right to be there. Like,
right.
When the friggin' like principal just like walks into the house, I'm like, that is.
I was gonna say
what?
the juxtaposition between the two scenes where it shows her peeling out, and she's like, "Nah, I'm not supposed to be there." There's a weird sound, but the principal's like, "Oh, an open door. Oh, a totally locked and bolted door." She did hear a crying child that seemed distressed, so I think at that point it was a little bit more fair. But yeah, that previously anal acting principal was pretty okay walking into a house and breaking the law.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, in terms of like decisions, if I hear a crying child, am I busting down the door? God, this is a tough one.
Because children, is this weird to say? Children cry, you know,
for no reason.
Like
sometimes.
I mean, like there's that thing too of like kids cry about things that don't matter, right?
Yeah,
because like when you drop a kid, like it's a lot of crying for like something that's not a big deal.
All right,
this is
anyway,
a place to take this joke.
It really is a Wendigo.
Look, all I'm saying is, you take a little bite of the baby, like they're gonna cry, but like, is it a big deal?
Yes, Luke.
Yes, it is.
The term "you're being a baby," like that doesn't exist. What am I trying to say? That exists for a reason, Like, do you think I would tell like Lanson, like, hey, you're being kind of a baby right now, if babies were like famously very courageous and tough?
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I mean, nobody puts baby in a corner. I live my
think-
life by
God damn it.
that.
Don't kill him again. Don't kill him again.
I'm putting him in timeout. He needs to think about what he's done.
You can't be the judge, jury, and executioner.
You're just mad that you can't do it. You would have done it
I
to both
wouldn't
of
have.
us and done the
I-
podcast by
I-
yourself.
I might have
Indeed.
done that actually. Now that you bring it up, that's a good idea. I want to say that unless you guys can think of any other instances, I think the really only time I was yelling at the screen and saying that you are going to get yourself killed and they got killed was the principal. I feel like in most other deaths, it was pretty either random or there's no way to see the creature coming, or the creature was just too powerful for them. I can't think of any other deaths that was like obviously the person was being really dumb and did it to themselves.
I don't know. I mean, I don't want to like disregard it because it's like an emotional thing and you can't always account for that. But the fact that that kid was like so gung ho to go live in the freaking caves, like with his
Yeah.
Wendigo dad and zombie brother, I question that a little.
Fair enough.
Like I know he did a lot, but there's diminishing returns on that, right? Like I'm not crazy in thinking that, right? Like there's got to come a point where you're like,
This is
oh,
just-
now we live in a cave, or I could live with my nice teacher who gets me ice cream.
Who's also Keri Russell?
Yeah.
See you, Dad.
I don't know, like not to be that guy, but yeah, like when he runs away to go join them in the cave, I'm like, you're a little kid, you've got a lot going on, but I don't know about this. Like,
Here's a question. This scene didn't make sense to me, and I think it could have been like a Luke thing where I just missed a bit of dialogue that explained the whole thing. But
oh, I could explain this. Jesse Plemons and Keri Russell were brother and sister.
nope, not what I was gonna ask. But good to know. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
His police officer guy from Oculus, you know, his I keep wanting to say companion, but his other
Partner.
guy, the other
Partner?
his partner. Thank you. His
Was it
partner.
Oculus?
Yeah, he was the dick dad in Oculus. I had to look it up because I was like, I swear I've seen this guy somewhere, and that's
That is. I just watched Oculus yesterday,
no
and
way.
I kept
Yeah.
looking at the dad, and I was like, where do I know him from?
From Antlers.
Hey.
He
All right.
pretty much zero things to do in this movie, but he was great in Oculus. He drives up to Jesse Plemons and Keri Russell's house, and he like has Jesse Plemons on the walkie-talkie, and he's like, I'm at your house. And Jesse Plemons like, yeah, just take a look around, I'll be there. So he goes around and like surveys the area and looks through the windows all weird. And Keri Russell's in there with the kid, but they don't really acknowledge each other. And then he hears a sound. Was there dialogue I missed that he was like, oh, we got to make sure your house is secure and safe? Or was like, what? I just didn't get the motivation behind that. And if we don't come up with it, I think it was kind of dumb and a stupid, weird character.
I thought that made sense to me. Like, I thought
Really?
that's what the sheriff was communicating over the walkie, was like, hey, I'll be home soon. Just like do a sweep of the perimeter. Because at that point, they think somebody killed the dad and took the little brother. So they think the kid is probably a target. So I thought it was like a standard, like small town police lockdown of like, all right, the deputy's there. You do a lap, have a look around. When I get home, I'll do a lap, have a look around, and then we'll kind of maintain a perimeter through the night. I thought that's what was going on.
Gotcha.
Otherwise, why would the
the
deputy be at his house, you know?
Well, that was my question. I was like, this is I feel like that him showing up and being him like, yeah, just take a look around. It was just kind of a weird scene where I was like, I don't know. It just felt weird for some reason. But I think his death, give it like, if we just go with what you said, he was supposed to be there. He heard a noise in the shed. He finds the kid. I don't know. I feel like that was pretty unavoidable as far as the death is concerned.
I guess he could avoid it if he was like bad at his job.
If he was a bad cop.
If he was like
eh.
slacking off behind a 7-Eleven instead of going and securing the perimeter.
Yeah, I'm there, man. Everything looks good.
Yeah, everything
Slurpee
looks
day.
okay here. Can I get the red bang?
Red bang, please. Large? What's the largest? Yeah, that one. Great.
What do you mean I can't put a Slurpee in the big gulp cup? What's wrong with that? The lid
Can we get
fits. The lid fits. That should be fine.
Can we get a couple road Slurpees? Have to pay for these? What?
Anyway, we gotta go.
See ya. Oh man, that's funny.
I think I agree with your assessment. Other than, and I don't know. I'm trying to think back to when I was a kid, and like, it's hard too, especially when you're a little kid that's put in the position of taking care of the family. I truly don't understand what that does to somebody, and I understand that it creates a certain loyalty and a certain rebellion that I don't understand. But I think I agree with you. Like the principal going into the house, I was a bit like, you're overstepping your bounds on that. And the little kid at the end running to the cave to be with his family, I was a bit like, huh. I mean, I guess I get it, but also like, I don't know that I get it.
Same with the fact that the kid never. He was very, very secretive in covering up the mistakes of his father, which again, weird familial loyalty. But I don't think it was weird to me that he never was like, I should like get it, like a nurse here or something. Maybe just because he knew his father might kill them is maybe that's what it is. But I don't know. He could have been like, hey, my father's really sick and ask for help maybe. But kind of like you said, I don't really know what the mindset is there on a psychological level.
I mean, talking about the dad, like this is a tough situation to be in, and I'm not trying to downplay this, but like, wouldn't there be a day where he woke up and he was like, actually, I don't think I'm getting better. Like, like not to be this guy, but don't you think there would be a day where he woke up and he was like, actually, I don't think I can take care of my kids anymore. Like,
I think I'm a menace to society, if I'm going to be honest with everybody.
Just this nice
Man.
internal monologue when he's looking into the mirror. It turns into a musical number.
Who am I?
Men will
Wendigo,
literally,
my baby.
men will literally turn into a Wendigo instead of going to therapy. Like, it's
Dang
crazy
straight,
out here.
dude. Forget that. You're not getting inside my mind, but I'll rip inside your brain.
But I don't know. Like, I get it. It's a lot of pressure. You're trying to keep your family together. You're hoping against hope that you're going to get better. And there is sort of like, I know that part of the movie is sort of a metaphor for addiction, but addiction has kind of like a shame element to it where being actually sick. And by the way, can't believe I phrased it that way because being addicted is actually being sick. But like, like if you had pneumonia, would you really be like, oh man, hope I recover from that? Like, it would be like if he like figured out on his own time, like, oh, I got cancer. I'll probably get better. Like there's an actual physical illness that's changing his body, and there was never a day where he woke up and was like, I might need to call someone. Let's see if the kids can stay with grandma and grandpa for a bit. Like this is
Mom, Dad, it's me again. Yeah, the Wendigo thing flared up again. Could you watch him for a couple days? I'm really trying here. I know. Yeah, I made sure that I didn't put the Tums in my stomach, but
hey,
okay.
Hey, Keri Russell.
I'll hang up
Are
so
you?
you can talk to her.
Yeah. Can you just take my kids to go get ice cream like you did the other day? Great. Here's the thing. When you get back, I will be a crazy creature with antlers. So maybe just don't come back. Now that I'm saying it out loud, what makes the most sense to me is my kids leave later today. They do not come back. And I embrace my destiny, which is to roam the wilderness.
Are you single?
I was trying to think what a Wendigo would do in the wilderness. It's like my destiny is to roam the wilderness,
Indeed.
licking rocks and wearing socks. Adios, bitch.
Dude, that's a freaking company we need to start. Wendigo socks. Oh boy.
And that's how they show that he was really too far gone in the scene. Is he ends the call in a way he's never ended any call, and he goes, "Adios, bitch." And you're like, "Oh, he's too far gone. He's not
you gotta
coming
kill
back
that
from this."
guy. You don't talk about Keri Russell that way, my dude.
He's too far gone, man.
But yeah,
Anyway.
I can't think of any other situations where like actual choices that characters made where it's like, oh man, I would have done that differently, because it really just kind of seems like a lot of it was the element of surprise and just Wendigo gets you.
Sure. Yeah, maybe the only thing that like could be different, and this is a much darker ending, but I'm just imagining Adam would really love this, but I'm just imagining Jesse Plemons at the end looks at the Wendigo sickness like spreading through his arm or whatever, and as soon as he sees that, just like wordlessly, like his sister and by proxy nephew, just like a few feet away, he just pulls out his gun and on the spot. Adios. I will never wear socks. You can't get me to do it.
Socks off, my dude.
Just like if that's how this movie ended, like,
wow.
I'm not saying it would be a better ending, but like
that's
really one you'd have to sit with,
Yeah, right.
Anyway, I forgot that I was hosting. I was waiting for somebody else to pick up the slack. I've been slacking hard.
I ain't gotta do nothing this time around. I'm just here.
Look, we all know what time it is. It's time for the championship round. It's time to see who brings home the belt. And I'm going to start with Lanson, and I'm giving him advance notice. I'm going to ramp up a little bit so he has time to think. But this is the part of the podcast where we talk about final boy status and final girl status. For those of you who don't know, final boy status means you get most of the way through the movie, but you don't quite survive it. You probably survive a good large chunk of it, and you are most likely the final death of the movie, but you do in fact die. Final girl status is taking home all the wheat thins. You survive this movie, you probably kill the creature, and you get away and you live out the rest of your life. And it's hopefully good. You're the Keri Russell of this picture.
And my reward is wheat thins.
Yeah, dude. What else would you want?
I would want a lot more than that.
Adam, don't be greedy.
Like
he starts doing like a hostage negotiation list. Like, I want a helicopter. I want $3,000 in unmarked bills.
Do you have any Triscuits over there, or just wheat thins?
What's the Cheez-It situation?
Oh yeah, dude. If that's on the table, you got to take that.
You're telling me you got white cheddar? You got yourself a deal. Look, Adam, it's a turn of phrase. It's
famously.
So many people say for all the wheat thins, and I think you just need to take it down a notch. Look, it's not often
wheat thick.
Oh boy,
it's not often that I put Adam in his place. I usually prefer that he do that to me for sexual reasons, but this is a moment in time where I'll put Adam in his place and I say, we do this podcast for the wheat thins. Please sponsor us. So kicking it over to Lance and Lappin, I want to hear if he thinks final boy status is on the horizon for him, and if final girl status is something he can walk away with. And if he can, I want to hear how he's going to do it. I want to hear his plan. So, Lanson, what titles are you walking away with from this round?
Both.
Oh, snap.
And let me tell you how. So the thing about me is, in this town, I'm not only making meth, I'm doing a lot of meth. I'm doing a lot. Like, I'm bleeding blue, just pure blue. Like, pretty much, if we're like down in production, all I'll do is like bleed myself a little bit. We'll cook that. It's just as good. So when the Wendigo comes round and senses I'm a diabolical person, which I am, not just because I do drugs, but because I'm also diabolical, because I
two things don't go hand in hand. So it's important to...
The two things don't go hand in hand. I'd like to say that. But in this case, I am both. So I don't tip my waiter. I don't bring back my library books. I ride your tail in traffic. I'm just the worst of the worst. I hide the remote. Terrible. So the Wendigo is attracted to me. But the thing is, when it tries to infect me, I got too much gunk in my body already. So there's no room for the Wendigo to come in. The inn is full, my dude. And so
Those roots shall not find purchase.
it shall not. So I end up, I may be, making meth, but I'm also a man of common sense. So when the Wendigo comes at me, I go into my bag of drug making materials and I pull out my Tums. I pop that thing open. The Wendigo opens its mouth. I'm shucking a bunch of those, just like throwing so many, all of them into the Wendigo's mouth. That goes down into its stomach. It eats raw meat. It's not going to know what the heck Tums is. Its body is just going to be absolutely destroyed. And then I'm just going to take out, my little pocket knife. I'm just going to cut a little bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and let the air take care of the heart of the Wendigo. So boom, by being a terrible person, as well as making drugs, I saved myself and the town. So in the end, was I really that bad?
Feeding the dark. Sometimes the savior that humanity needs is the one who feeds the darkest part of himself.
That's right. You got to feed the beast.
Got to unleash the beast.
Engage the cage.
Adam, I'm going to kick it over to you, my friend. Final boy status, final girl status, and what's the plan to get out? What do you think?
Well, I think I'm going to make final boy status for sure. I don't think I'm going to make final girl status, but I'm going to try. And the way I'm going to try, well, the way I am as a predisposition in this town, I come to this town because I'm running away from another supernatural creature. I want to get some mileage behind me. I need some time to think. And also, I'm a sex addict. So I have sex with every single person in this town, which buys me some time from the creature that's been following me, if you know what I'm saying. And a Wendigo shows up.
It follows you everywhere.
And it follows me to Oregon eventually. Anyway, this Wendigo shows up, and this is not my first, experience with a supernatural creature. I'm familiar with their MO and with how things usually go with them. So the Wendigo shows up, he infects me, and I have two hungers within myself. I have a hunger for meat of a person, and I have a hunger for enormous amounts of coitus.
The flesh.
Yes. Lust of the flesh in two senses, as you will.
Yes, both. Yeah.
And so I'm getting sicker because I am eating people, but I'm also having sex.
In more than one way.
And it's kind of compounding on itself. People are dying from the It Follows creature. People are getting infected by the Wendigo, and this town gets torn apart by both creatures. I am the final Wendigo that is sickened. I have nothing left to have sex with. I'm sitting in this, desolate Oregon town. I sit down. I see a creepy naked dude walking towards me, and I just give in to my fate and get killed by the It Follows ghost. And that's how I don't survive, but I take the creature down with me.
Also, you preface this with, this is your best attempt to survive. And the plan involves actively giving up at the very end.
Yeah, man.
I mean, what's a guy gonna do? There's no one left.
To walk away.
There's no one left. Yeah.
You have to know.
You gotta leave while you're still on top.
Yep.
Well, let me tell you what, boys. I will give myself final boy status and a little thing called final girl status. I'm coming for all the crayons. It's gonna be a big day for me in Oregon.
Get the wheat thins ready.
Oh, I'm eating them all, baby.
Pop a box of wheat thins open.
Snap it open. Snap it. I want to hear the crunch of that box open. Here's where I'm at, gentlemen. The way I see it, I know at the end of the day the Wendigo's biggest weakness. And that is why, upon arriving in a small town in Oregon, and I catch wind of there being a Wendigo in town from the ex-sheriff, I think to myself, there's only one thing to be done. I put a casting call up on the internet for anybody within driving distance of this Oregon town, promising obscene amounts of money. And this casting call is specifically asking for a Keri Russell type. Because we all know the Wendigo is powerless against a Keri Russell type.
You're right.
I go ahead and I take them to sort of a makeshift boot camp of sorts. It is, in fact, run by me and the other experts in killing Wendigos, Sam and Dean Winchester. We get these Keri Russell types trained up. We get them real good at slicing the cavity open so that the air can reach the heart. Meanwhile, back in town, fucking everybody's a Wendigo at this point. We're so far removed from what's happening there. Presumably everyone's infected. We're not super worried about it, if we're being honest. We send in our army of Keri Russells, and they know exactly what to do. They're slicing open the chest, let the air hit that heart. And if somebody walks away infected, we know that there is a point of no return. We put them on a nice diet, no sushi. We have learned no sushi. And just make sure they have a steady supply of, like, I don't know, M&Ms or something. So it's like that classic, have water when you're around alcohol type thing. And then we kind of just wait and see. Classic John Carpenter's The Thing style. I, of course, walk away completely uninfected, because if I do get infected, I have also volunteered at a nearby medical school for an experimental open heart procedure. Or they'll just go ahead and cut that cavity open, have a look around and be like, yep, this is what it looks like when the dude's alive. Sew me back up. And no Tums. I was very firm on that. There will be no Tums. And at the end of the day, I win a great malpractice suit too, because the teacher fully leaves his watch inside me. So not only do I survive, I'm easily $10,000 to $50,000 richer.
Oh, yeah, at least.
And these
$10
to
$50,000.
Yeah, somewhere in that span of money.
Okay, yeah.
$10 to $50,000, somewhere in that span is the amount of money I make. And you know what? The Keri Russells, here's the thing. They'll be mad at first because there was, in fact, not an acting gig. But eventually, they'll understand what they can do for humanity. And I send them home. Like I said, they're all in driving distance to this town. They're from various parts of the country, dude. They're going to go around the world, and every time they meet a Keri Russell type, they'll spread the gospel, man. Before you know it, Wendigos don't stand a chance. There's an army of Keri Russells that are going to fight them and take them down. So even if I do get infected, at the end of the day, I know the world is safe.
Amen.
I've done it again, boys, and the wheat thins are mine.
I like to imagine from your story like a B- medical student opening up this random person's heart, and then they see the heart and they're like, that's cool. And then the heart just melts in on itself and they're like, is that supposed to happen?
In this mythology, when they open my chest, there's my regular heart, and then there's like a ball of sticks outside of my heart. The ball of sticks immediately evaporates and just a regular human heart is left.
They're like, Jerry, I thought you said we hadn't cut this guy open before.
Well, the abscess is gone, so I guess I'm a doctor now.
Guess I'm a hero.
I'm good at what I do. What can I say?
Cancer runs away from me.
That guy gets like Stephen Strange levels of overconfident. Like, disease literally runs from me. Anyway, well, we've done it. We've broken down the movie. We've made our plans to survive. Some of us don't make it all the way through, but you know what? We go out having had a lot of sex. So at the end of the day, that's kind of a win.
Yes.
Oh, it is for me. Yeah, I don't need wheat thins. My ending was satisfying enough.
Yeah, you may have died, but you have dozens of pictures on your phone of you just
That is my best angle. So, you know,
every man's best angle.
it is. Yeah.
But at any rate, so I'll just say quickly for me, if you want to know what I'm up to, follow me on Twitter. I'll always talk about what I'm up to there. It's at Luke Haueter, LukeHaueter. I do live streams. I make videos. I do lots of very silly things. So you can follow me there to stay up to date. That's also just my @ on every social media platform, Instagram, TikTok. So follow me wherever you would be interested in following me. What plugs do we have from Mr. Lanson Lappin? That's the question. And then we'll kick it right over to Adam Bowe and see what he has to say.
As always, my plug, unashamed of this, but it is this podcast, Final Boy Status. It's a lot of fun to make. Hopefully you guys are enjoying it. I would assume so if you've listened all the way up to this point in the episode. So yeah, go ahead. Find us wherever you find your podcast, Final Boy Status. We appreciate the support. And yeah.
My plug, I am currently not doing a whole lot, but I have a bunch of ideas like any person does. We'll see if they come into fruition and which ideas stick. But either way, I don't tweet, so I'm not on Twitter, but I do have a Twitch. It's Indie Adam Bones. Find me there. See if anything's going on. If not, none of my dreams came true. So
harsh.
I'm my worst critic.
Adam, there is something important I want to bring up, which is the next movie we will be discussing is an Adam pick, and I want to know, what are we watching next?
You know, I have two movies I've kind of been bouncing between, but because I'm put on the spot, this will help me just choose one of them. This is a movie I have seen before, and I had very weird feelings about it and would love to hear your guys' thoughts, and also breaking down the survivability would be really fun. The movie is called The Empty Man. And
I just watched this a couple weeks ago.
No way. It's a wild movie. Again, very weird feelings about it, but I think it'd be really fun for this podcast. So that's going to be the next movie.
Yeah, that was on my list of movies that I was going to potentially pick. So rad.
Not even on my list. It just came to my mind. So I'm going rogue here, guys.
He took from my list. What's happening?
No, he can read your mind.
Well, so for those of you who like to follow along week by week, next week is The Empty Man. You can check it out. I think it's streaming on HBO Max. That's where I watched it.
Cool.
So yeah, if you're following along, you can check it out there. Any last thoughts from you gentlemen before we bid them adios?
No, I don't want to talk to them anymore.
All right. So I will say to the audience, quoting directly from the movie Antlers, I will say, adios, bitch.